The email showed up in Victor Hale's inbox at 2:13 a.m., long after the last light on any trading floor had gone out and the skyscrapers of lower Manhattan had become slabs of glass reflecting nothing. The subject was short, almost careless: "You have no idea what you're holding." He almost deleted it. Junk mail, probably. But something about the phrasing gave him pause. Hale was not a paranoid type of man. 37 years old, a senior analyst for one of the nation's leading investment advisory firms, he spent most days poring over balance sheets and regulatory filings, searching for anomalies that others may have overlooked. But as he clicked open the attachment, a chill so cold swept over him that his fingers froze above the keyboard. The document was a series of internal bank transfers, coded, exacting, and across 5 major American financial institutions. On the surface, they appeared to be standard offshore hedging structures. But the figures, $50 million here, $75 million there, didn't make sense. Each transfer escalated through accounts in Cyprus, then re-entered the U.S. markets through a series of shell companies that should never have existed at all. At the bottom was this line of text: "This isn't fraud. It's insurance." He closed the laptop. He had to tell himself he'd look again in the morning, with fresher eyes. But sleep never came. Wall Street's engines were revved by 8 a.m. The screens on trading floors flickered green and red, and coffee steamed from cardboard cups gripped by traders in rumpled suits. Hale, entering the office with the file still smoldering in his brain. He told no one, not his colleagues, not his boss. Instead, he buried himself in his computer and began cross-checking the transfers against public filings. Hours slipped by. Patterns emerged. The money wasn't vanishing. It was being parked strategically in derivatives related to municipal bonds. That, in itself, wasn't unusual. Not so much the what of the exchange as the when. Each transfer was made in conjunction with a federal disaster relief bill. Hurricanes, wildfires, floods. Each time Congress green-lit billions of dollars in emergency spending, a shadowy web of accounts funneled hundreds of millions to bets that would directly benefit from government aid. It wasn't theft. It was anticipation. Someone knew where the money would land long before the bills were even passed. By mid-afternoon, Hale received a buzz on her desk phone. "You're looking in the wrong places," a voice said. No introduction. Just flat, almost bored. "Who is this?" "You already know." The line went dead. His stomach tightened. He looked around. The office hummed as it always did, with phones ringing, keys clacking, and analysts arguing about risk models. But suddenly he felt naked, as if someone had a direct view into his monitor. He downloaded the files onto a flash drive that night, after everyone else had gone home. It shook in his hand as he worked to slide it into the pocket of his coat. He had no strategy, just a sense of what he couldn't do with this inside the firm. If the transfers were genuine, they would involve some of America's biggest banks. And maybe the government itself. 3 nights after that, Hale was in a dank diner near Canal Street, sitting across from an unnamed woman. She was older, sharp-eyed, expressing herself in that clipped manner of people who are conditioned to speaking under the clock. She purported to be a former SEC investigator. He pushed the flash drive across the table. She didn't touch it. "Do you realize what this is?" she asked. "I think so. It's front-running federal aid. Disaster relief." She shook her head slowly. "No. It's worse. This isn't front-running. It's underwriting. These trades do not merely anticipate disasters, they demand them." Her words settled in the thick air of the desolate diner. Hale felt his throat go dry. "What are you saying?" "What I'm saying," she said softly, "is that money moves when somebody knows billions are going to be authorized. And the only way to find that out is if somebody has leverage on votes. Think about it. How does a private fund know a bill is going to pass before anyone has written it?" Hale gaped at her, the refrigerator behind the counter humming loudly in his ears. "You're saying disasters are profits." She accepted the flash drive at last. "I'm telling you to forget that you saw this." But Hale couldn't. Over the week, he assembled shards of the network. Shell companies in Delaware had no employees. LLCs registered to non-existent addresses. And one strain that particularly troubled him, a political action committee flushing millions into Senate races in Florida and Louisiana, the two states hammered hardest by climate-fueled disasters. The trades weren't random. They were policy in motion. And then, the email again. Same sender, different subject line, stop digging. And an image of him leaving his apartment that morning. Hale tried to pull back. He promised himself that he'd turn everything over to the proper regulators, that it wasn't his fight. But when he tried an old contact at the SEC, the number had been disconnected. When he contacted a journalist he had faith in, the man never got back to him. 2 days later, the name of that journalist showed up in an obituary. Car accident, the article said. That evening, Hale narrowly escaped arriving home to find a black sedan parked out front of his building that slowed pace, headlights focused on him, only to pull away when he disappeared inside. Now it was obvious, this wasn't a leak. It was a warning. Yet, something inside him would not give up. Maybe it was arrogance. Perhaps fear of what might happen if no one did speak. But he couldn't shake $1 billion image of taxpayer money feeding a system meant to capitalize from suffering. He left New York. Booked a one-way ticket in another name. Wound up in Chicago, living in motels, staying 2 nights in each place. And from there, he got back in touch with the woman. This time she didn't answer. So he moved to the only option left, the digital underworld. Where financial analysts, whistleblowers, and conspiracy theorists rubbed shoulders under screen names. He started posting bits of the files, carefully redacted, and asked questions nobody else dared. Responses flooded in. Some accused him of fabricating. Others filled in dots he did not see. One user cited a hedge fund with assets that inflated 300% within a year, on the strength of almost entirely municipal derivatives linked to federal relief programs. Another suggested a former deputy director at FEMA sat on the fund's board. And then, 3 weeks in, his account was suspended. No warning. Every message is scrubbed. The black sedan found him that same night. It happened fast. A 2 a.m. knock on his motel door. He didn't answer. 10 minutes later, they were disturbed by rattling at the door handle. He made his way through the alley, barefoot on the gravel, and slithered out of the bathroom window. At sunrise he was on a bus out of Illinois. And so, the month after that, he moved like a shadow. Denver. Salt Lake City. Seattle. He used cash, steered clear of airports, and did not leave a trace. But the network followed. And at each stop, the warnings followed: an unmarked envelope tucked under his door, a phone dropped in his seat with but one message, final notice. Exhaustion gnawed at him. His days had succumbed to paranoia, exile, and fear. Yet the further he ran, the more it became evident, the system didn't have to kill him. It only needed to erase him. With snow blanketing the streets of Portland, he made one last decision in December. He posted all of the files, tens of thousands in total with transfer and registration documents as well as internal memos, to an encrypted public server. He posted the links across dozens of forums, private mailing lists, and anonymous tip lines. And then he waited. For 3 days, nothing. Then, headlines. Mystery data dump shows millions spent in offshore derivatives linked to relief funds. Shadows over shadow accounts, the Treasury knows nothing. Stimulus relief recovery and reinvestment act address. Congress calls for hearings on disaster trading. The story exploded. Networks picked it up. Senators issued statements. The structure felt the sun for the first time. But Hale knew better than to rejoice. 2 weeks later, a press conference was broadcast from Washington. A Treasury spokesman called the documents mischaracterized and fraudulent. Within hours, articles were published disparaging the data as digitally manipulated. Major outlets retracted their coverage. And then, silence. The story burst as rapidly as it had ignited. Hale was sitting alone in a rented room in Portland, the TV flickering against the chipped wallpaper. His labor, his sacrifice, had vanished into static. He turned off the screen. Outside, the snow kept falling. But somewhere he knew it hadn't vanished. Out there, somewhere, traitors were still lurking in the corners, billions arrayed and waiting for the next hurricane, the next flood or fire. Somewhere, the network beamed with satisfaction at its own invincibility. And while Victor Hale examined forlornly the dark window, hardly distinguishing his own reflection against that of the snow, he also understood what he had been so anxious to evade, that it was the truth. The trades weren't just numbers. They were inevitabilities. And the silence in and of itself wasn't weakness. It was design.